Well, that, as you know, is the song about the little engine that could. And it's sung by Burl Ives.
Yeah.
I can see his face.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's this other sweet song Mykal played, and it's called the Donut Song. And the Donut Song, and it's written in the rainbow. It's written a message in the rainbow in golden letters that pay attention to the donut, not the hole.
Oh.
I put on Facebook.
So the reason that I wanted us to start with that song is that idea, people nodded, people have heard that story, no? The little engine that could.
Right.
And the notion is, today as we're looking at affirmations and denials as a feature of prayer, as a feature of getting ourselves ready and being in a place of prayer, I really wanted to touch on something that is commonly known. That little story, it's one of the best known stories, and it's been something that teachers have conveyed to students for years and years. It first came up, that whole notion, that quote, came up in a journal in Sweden in 1902.
Huh.
Swedish people came up with this in 1902. And then a minister gave the talk of I Think I Can in 1906. So this was not the domain of Earnest Holmes, founder of Science of Mind, but it does show the context that Earnest Holmes and some of the colleagues that he was with, that these ideas were floating around. So this story of the little engine that could, it really captures some of the key ideas that Earnest Holmes provided. The notion of what we think makes a difference. He had decided, stated, how much can one demonstrate? Just what one can believe. How much can we see? How much can we accept? How much can we find in consciousness that is no longer reputed by our own denials? Whatever that is, that much we can have. Affirmations and denials are tools that we can use. So I'm going to talk first about affirmations, then I'm going to talk a little bit about denials. And then I'm going to, for those of you who choose, I had a little pack of paper, but there are little cards back there. I'm going to have people write an affirmation or denial as part of today's activities. So to start with, an affirmation. We heard the little train. I think I can. I think I can. I think I can. An affirmation is something, and it's stated what? Is it stated in the past? I've already done this. Stated in the past?
No.
No.
Is it stated in the future?
No.
Nope. Stated in the present. The thing about stating it in the present is that it focuses us on this now. Now, in that affirmation of that little engine, I think I can. I don't know about you, but I know that there are times that I have acted as if I'm wearing a little sign that says, I can't.
Right.
And the little sign might be on my chest, and I might just be walking around, you know. Again, I don't know about any of you, but I have certainly found myself falling into the role of victim. And victim is definitely a I can't kind of status. The little engine's affirmation is about pulling that sign off. Another sign that I've seen worn as a demonstration is not enough. Again, I don't know about any of you, but I know for me that I have definitely said about myself that I'm not enough. I'm not smart enough, I haven't learned enough, I don't know enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not healthy enough, I'm not enough. I'm seeing some nods, so Is there anyone else ever experience or have a message of, I'm not enough? That declaration of, I'm not enough, is an affirmation.
Yeah.
It is telling the universe, it is telling the divine, it is telling all of creation, okay, fine, you're not enough. We'll just show you. We'll demonstrate that. We can prove. We can absolutely prove. So I would actually say that many of us are fabulous demonstrators. Because to the extent that we have felt that we're not enough, and we've had circumstances manifest where in fact we're not enough, we have been excellent at putting together and coordinating with the universe to satisfy our belief. The reason I say that, though, is that if we have the power to do that, suppose, just try on the experiment, suppose we have equal power to say, I'm more than enough. How does it feel? Just take it in for a moment. What's the feeling sensation in your body when we sit with the I'm not enough? Do you notice your musculature? Do you notice how your body feels? Do you notice is there a sense of vitality, a sense of energy? The I'm not enough? There's probably not. Although sometimes we may really argue about it. What? Just sit for a moment with the I am more than enough. Breathe it in. I am more than enough. And breathe it out. If you are more than enough, does that take anything away from anyone?
No.
Does being more than enough if you are more than enough, can we be a contagion of wondrous power and might and energy? So the affirmation, I am more than enough. I can. I think I can. What does it cost us to try on this experiment? As we were identifying things to celebrate, or as we were identifying prayer requests, within those prayer requests, we are imagining the capacity to move from where things are into that other space. So that notion of going from a lack of well-being into a space of abundant wellness, abundant well-being. Now, one of the things I wanted to share is that just a small part of our human experience might not be enough. So we could say something like, although in this moment it seems I am less healthy than I would like to be, I know that more vitality is on its way to me now. Sometimes we've got to recognize a challenge and deny what's standing in the way. Denials is a challenging thing for me to talk about for a couple of reasons. where I learned about science of mind, it wasn't a big deal taught about in terms of how to do treatment. And as a psychologist, I became apprehensive about naming a negative thing. Let me show you an example. Right now, don't anybody think about purple elephants dancing. I don't want anyone thinking about these purple elephants dancing. Stop it, don't do it. You are not imagining purple elephants dancing. You're not imagining if they are wearing tutus, or you're not imagining that they might be
Pink tutus.
Pink tutus. You're not imagining that. You're not imagining that. One of the things about that is that unless you're extremely disciplined, it's very difficult to tell someone don't, and then the following. My sister and I talked about this because she was a speech-language pathologist and she worked at a camp, a summer camp for children. And she learned through a very skillful experience when the horde of 3-year-old language-delayed children start running as a pack, screaming to them, "Don't run!" simply speed their little feet up.
So much more to see.
Don't run, they are like off to the races. Same thing as purple elephants dancing, pink elephants dancing, whichever color you don't want them to be, let them not be that. What she learned is the idea that you tell kids what it is that you want. Let's walk slowly. How slowly can we go? It's much harder for them to hold on to that notion of running when suddenly it's become very exciting to walk slowly. Or the notion of a teacher who's in a class and the kids are all screaming and she's like, "All of you stop screaming!" It seems to be a little counterproductive. It works much better when you say, "Let's be quiet." I mean, and I say from some experience, because I practice this with my children, my 2 girls. When they were little, I would tell them I wanted to do something, and I would name it positively. And they might argue and say, "We don't want that." It's like, okay, then you're not getting that, and you're not getting this either. What? I would really get their attention, because suddenly it wasn't like bargaining. If you do this, then you'll get this. It's like, now you're not getting anything. Suddenly they became much more attentive. Suddenly the idea of perhaps engaging in that activity had an increased value than what it did before. I always found when I was raising my children that their moms and I had just different ways of being. Their mom's household, where she was raised, her father was someone who could get very angry very suddenly. He'd get very loud, and it was like a cloudburst. You know, the clouds come through, it rains out, and then it's sunny. And he was like that. He would have a complete blow up, and then he'd be all happy afterwards. Now, the wake of his unhappy moment was that the people around him were all left in the wet of his storm. You know, he'd be like, "Well, what's your problem? I'm all happy now. I'm fine." And her mother was like, "Well, I'm not now." You know, it's a little bit like tag. And he felt that, you know, tag, you're it. I was angry, but now I'm not. She was now angry. And she was not going to just have this blow up. So the girls' moms were much louder. When things would happen, there was shouting and yelling. I made a very deliberate choice that if I was going to get angry, I would get quieter. So rather than shout, I would get quiet. You know, and actually Elizabeth had said to Mykal, you know, if something's wrong, it's that you're not saying anything. That's how I know that something is wrong. And it was just a different way of being with the girls. Now, I give this background because in terms of denial, I think there are powerful, useful ways to do denial, and I think there are ways that are not useful. I think that there's a thing called neuro-linguistic programming. It's knowing how people take in communication. When I give you that, don't think of purple elephants dancing, that's a kind of key neuro-linguistic programming. Fact of the matter is, it's impossible to tell people what you don't want them. You know, don't do this. The mind doesn't hear the don't, and it hears everything after this. It's the same thing that when we're having a conversation, you know when there's a conversation and someone says blah, 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 but, blah, blah, blah. You know to ignore everything they said. You know, once the word but comes out, you know to forget everything that whatever came before but. What they really mean is what follows the but.
Right.
So you're really left with the crap out of the but.
Did you pick that up?
It wasn't like no rip there. That was not the outline. I say this because the universe is the same way. I'm so joyful about my life, but for these few things. The universe is like people in that regard. The universe also responds to the feeling tone in us. If we do an affirmation, I am vital and alive. I am vital and alive. You laugh because I don't think I've convinced you. I don't think I persuaded you about my vital life. Denial is about being able to wipe that away. A metaphor I used to use years ago is sometimes it's very difficult to even get to denial because what we can do is we try to cover stuff up. Like, I'm happy. I'm happy. It's all good. And there's a thing called repression. You may have heard of it. I'm saying not. It's all good. You might have heard that in this faith tradition. It's all good.
Yeah.
Oh, your mother died. It's all good. You know, she's in a better place now.
Yeah.
Your friends have transitioned. It's good. It's all good for them. Yeah, it is. Again, I say this because what happens is that we have actually human emotional reactions to the world that we live in. And when we don't pay attention to the human emotional reactions that we have, my metaphor has been, they go under the table. I like to think of our lives kind of like a banquet table. And we've got all of our emotions sitting around the table. But we like to exercise the icky ones. We're like, I'm too holy, too good for mean, spirited anger. Jealousy never passes my mind. My heart cannot be jealous. I can't be sad because life is so good. So when we exile those emotions of jealousy or anger or sadness or anxiety, they just go under the table. And once they're under the table, you see how those shoelaces are there? They mess with the shoelaces. They tie you to your chair. Or you know, you've got your little tie. Your repressed sadness, it wraps your foot to the chair. So when you try to get up, you trip down, and that's what kind of brings your attention back to this sadness and the hurt. So denials aren't about saying those things aren't there. Denials are about recognizing their presence, but damping down on the power that they continue to have by recognizing them. So a denial may be, even though I feel sad, I know that something else is possible. Even though I feel jealous, I know that divine wisdom is working through me. Even though I feel resentment, I focus on another possibility. The other night here at the center, we showed what the bleep do we know? And in that movie, one of the big ideas is that we live in a realm of infinite possibilities. But sometimes we don't pay attention to those infinite possibilities. A denial helps us create the possibility that what we're feeling at any given time is not the breadth and width and depth of who and what we are. A denial may very well be acknowledging, I feel apprehensive. A denial isn't about saying, okay, isn't it lovely that we're finally having the rainfall outside there? I'm so glad that we finally have sufficient water cleaning the air, making it beautiful. I do that, and you look at me and you say, he's a crazy man. And I don't know that I should really hang out with him because it might not be safe. Denial isn't about that, but it's saying, I know I live in a climate where it can rain. Even though it's not raining now. I know that I live in a world where rain is possible. Denial is about that shift. Emma Curtis Hopkins described, I will tell you that between you and your good, which belongs to you, and which you ought to have, is your idea of the absence of good.
Oh.
So the proper kind of denial is based on the recognition that in reality there is no limitation. So the mind can as easily make a planet as an acorn. And Earnest Holmes brought that one forward. To engage in a denial, it isn't about saying that what we have doesn't exist. I want to tell you a story about Elie Wiesel. Elie Wiesel was a 15-year-old boy who lived in Hungary. His family was from Romania. And he and his mother and his father and his sister were sequestered into a Jewish ghetto. And from there it became very easy to take the sequestered people in the ghetto and move them into the Holocaust death camps. He wrote about this in a book called Night. He was part of the group that put together the American Holocaust Museum. He's won Nobel Peace Prizes. When he got out of the Holocaust experience, he didn't want to talk about it, but as he made friends with people, they said, you know, you really gained some wisdom through that experience. One of the things that he wrote in his book, it's just a scene that stays with me. It was that powerful, and I'll share it with you. He talked about being crammed into one of the trains. You know, that the Jewish people were being crammed into this train without any regard for them as human beings. And that his attention was so taken, and everyone's attention was so taken with this terrible mistreatment. But what he paid attention to for a moment was there was a crack in this dark train car where he could capture a glimpse of the pink of sunrise. And among the other things that he said is that he decided that he wasn't going to let those circumstances define his choices. So Elie Wiesel decided, he engaged in denial that these guards who had no regard for him as a human being, he denied their power to get inside of his mind. And they were very good at figuring out how to get inside of people's minds. I'm sure we've all encountered people who are skilled at knowing where our buttons are. The denial is denying to give them the power to push those buttons. How do we make our buttons a little less responsive? I mean, a simple denial. I deny the power that others have. I mean, Stephanie, every time she speaks, she has a central part of that chant. I deny, or
Oh, right.
that no person, no personality, no circumstances have power over me. Those are all examples of denials. Sometimes it's hard to feel them, but we say them so that we can build up the energy towards that. So just take a moment and think, is there something that's been pushing our buttons? And we would like to deny it that power. It's a coin. There is this thing that it has had power, but we flip the coin over and we deny that power and we reclaim our own power. And I would say that that's what's going to be a powerful denial. It isn't simply, it's raining outside. Because again, you all look at me and say, no, it's not. I see sun shining. But you know what? Somewhere on this entire planet, it is raining. Somewhere it is raining. So in fact, my affirmation, it is raining, is true. One of the things about affirmations is sometimes it's about finding that piece that is so small, that little itty bitty piece. And sometimes our human experience does not feel perfect. And in those times we will willingly consider that something might be possible. Perhaps something less than the final outcome we want, even though for spirit there is no big or small. So, if we can grab here.
I'm in the process.
Mykal is in the process of organizing.
That's me.
So, I'm going to ask each of us to take a moment and to just come up with either an affirmation or a denial.
Shall not throw.
How about paper?
Oh, never mind.
I assume.
I handed it back.
So, again, a denial is, I deny that this has power. I assert this over this. Which you choose is not important. And if you want to be really creative, you can do one of each. There's no limit. Unless you set a limit. So how are people landing on their affirmation or denial?
Affirmation was easier.
Pardon?
Can we do an even though kind of thing for a denial?
This
That's
is,
what it is.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like what you say when you're tapping, even though I
Yeah,
have a feeling
exactly.
of
Yeah.
whatever.
That's what I thought, yeah.
Yeah. This is an unstructured direction. You do what's going to serve you. So the intent is that whatever you write is perfect for you here and now. And as you say it and as you keep it, you may find that other words want to come out. And rather than saying, oh my gosh, I did it wrong, it's like, oh my gosh, I have a whole new one. How great is that? How wise am I? Isn't it wonderful that I am a vehicle of divine wisdom, manifesting through my ability to speak this affirmation or this denial? So to conclude today's talk, we're going to do two things. We are going to stand up with our affirmation or our denial. Stand up.
Okay.
Up you get.
I'm certain.
And we're going to look at our affirmation or our denial. And we are going to declare it with a full body, from our full body. Not like, I am so blessed. I'm so blessed. But I am so blessed. So whatever it is that our affirmation is, we are going to stand in it. And we are going to say each of our affirmations 3 times, solidly. We are convincing ourselves, we are convincing the automatic action of the law about the truth of our words. And again, if we find that we're saying it and suddenly another word comes in, great. Okay, on the count of 3, we will start, and then we'll all take a deep breath in, and we'll do it a second time, and then we'll all take a deep breath in, and we'll do it a third time. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. I am more than enough.
Nothing can stop me from realizing my dreams, even me.
Life can't stop.
Okay, and another time, breathe in deeply. And say it. I am more than enough.
Nothing can stop me from realizing my dreams.
And breathe in. And again, say it with power. I am more than enough. And so it is. So thank you for playing this game, and take the affirmation home with you. A potential homework is to do this affirmation when you get up in the morning, when you go to bed at night, and any other additional times that you desire.
Yay!
Yeah. And for the offering, we're going to hear the song More Than Enough rather than our usual I Am So Blessed.
Turn it up.